Love is our true divine nature, and our heart serves as the intersection of the spiritual and physical, connecting our soul with our body as the conduit for anchoring our divinity onto the earth plane. Embodying our divinity is the key to our ascension and to manifesting our highest destiny in this life. The teachings of the heart are alchemy. Join spiritual mentor and channel Jennifer Spohr each week on a sacred journey to lift the veil to remembering your divinity and meet other beautiful souls who are living the path of the awakened heart. Hey everyone, I am excited to share today that I have Brenda Reiss as a guest here on the show. She is a two-time author, speaker, and podcast host who is a sought-after transformation and forgiveness coach that guides her cherished clients from being stuck in shame, resentment, and self-sabotage to feeling freer, more expanded, and ready to share themselves and their passions with the world. When she is not providing compassionate guidance to help her clients create more abundance, clarity of purpose, and freedom in their lives, you can find her hiking, playing with grandkids, snuggling with her fur babies, or reading a book or two to expand her mind, soul, and business. Welcome, Brenda.
Thank you, Jennifer. I'm so happy to be here with you.
I'm so happy to be here with you too. And for those listening, Brenda and I have been connected for some time, and it's just very synchronistic how we kind of just end up, continuing to cross paths in various ways.
We do.
I love that so much. I also love what you said in your bio about snuggling with your fur babies, because I
Yes.
have that exact thing in my own bio. I just
Oh,
find that funny.
that is, see, synchronicity.
There you go. More synchronicity. One can never have too much of that, right?
No.
So, Brenda, oh my gosh, I love the work that you do. Tell us more about the work that you do, and what inspired you to focus on forgiveness.
Mm. So it's interesting. So you'll get this, that I always say that forgiveness found me because I was 30 years in corporate, right? I wasn't planning on leaving it. And what happened was I came to a place where I thought I had achieved my ultimate dream position, right? And what I found was that I was more unhappy than ever. And it was interesting to find that, like, this upper management that I worked for as an executive assistant was never happy with what I did. And so I worked harder and found myself where my body was breaking down. Yet I felt, I needed to continue to work harder. This is, before I kind of had what I call my awakening. And so it was in my late 40s and recently single after going through a really tough divorce. And a couple things happened to make me look at my situation differently. And one was that I was in adrenal fatigue and started having ocular migraines, right? And I didn't get headaches. And then my back started having issues. So I ended up with a back fusion, a neck fusion, and then a brain tumor surgery. And what that did is it got me out of corporate. And then I had to start, well, and then the second thing was I was also being contacted by the FBI at that time and was looking at 7 to 10 years of prison because out of my codependency with the ex-husband, I had signed papers to something that turned out to be illegal. And luckily I didn't know it at the time, yet I was still interrogated through a 2-year process. Before my ex ended up going to prison and not me. And I had been asking the universe for guidance on what to do, right? Through going through corporate, I was just miserable, my body breaking down. I couldn't go back to corporate because it wasn't healthy, but I wasn't sure which direction to go. So what happened was, because I had not planned on being an entrepreneur, right? I was thinking, oh, direct me to another job. Telling the universe, right, what I needed them to do. And what they did was they ended up showing me that I was gifted a reading. And this is before I was really into the readings and stuff. And I was gifted a reading, and this gal says, I see you going to Mount Shasta. And I had never even heard of Mount Shasta, hadn't been there. But it was intriguing to me. So I had got information about Mount Shasta, and in the advertisement, in the back of this little pamphlet, was this picture. And you know how you see someone and you go like, you see a picture or you see a person, you go, oh, I need to know more about this person. And what was underneath her name, it said forgiveness coach. And I said to myself, I don't know what this is, but I mean, I could feel it. My whole body vibrated. It's like, I need to know what that is. And so that's what, and then I met with her and she found a pattern of why the boss had been treating me that way. And was because that boss was just like the ex-husband and the other ex-husband, right? So I have a pattern. She helped me to locate or identify that pattern and to help me start releasing it. And she introduced me to the radical forgiveness work that just, I swear I heard angels, right, Jennifer? When you connect with something, it was like, oh, this is it. So that's what started me on the path to forgiveness that I didn't even know I needed.
That is so beautiful. And yeah, so many nuggets that you shared in that. I mean, like, it's so interesting how what we think that we want, right, isn't always what we really need, and how the universe, God, source, whatever that higher power is for the listeners,
Yeah.
how there's a tendency to just kind of keep redirecting us
Yeah. I
to
like that
surrender.
redirecting. I like the redirecting. I was calling it a 2x4, but I like redirecting
Oh,
better.
sometimes it's that too. Yes. Yeah, it's interesting how it just seems to be part of the human experience, how we reach such a place of tremendous resistance that it's like we eventually, like what you said with that 2x4, we just eventually have to make a change, or become aware to the need to see things differently than we have
Yeah.
in the past.
Yes. And we need guidance in doing that a lot
We
of times.
so do. Yes, we all have our blind spots. That's an interesting topic in of itself, right? The need to have support, because what it's so true what you're saying. And at the same time, there is a need to be acutely tuned in to our own inner voice, and
Hmm.
to follow that intuition. And I believe that it's a dance of both.
I believe so too. It is a dance of both.
Yeah,
And I think our pain can push us, right? That's what I've been thinking lately about, is that's what my pain pushed me. Like the universe kind of used that because I've had a lot of body things happen. And, and as the more that I've done this work over the last decade or a little bit more now, was realizing that a lot of us get those lessons through our bodies to kind of wake us up, right?
that is so true. And if you're feeling guided to share any stories around that, I would love that.
Well, yeah. So it was because it's been interesting. I had, when I was looking back and before I was aware of kind of like the body, the body keeps score or the body can help us with messages. I was because of the trauma, because of the experiences I'd had in my childhood and growing up, I didn't realize how disconnected I became to the body. And that I really went into more thinking, right? Logic, more of that to protect myself. I learned all of that through the different spiritual work that I did, Akashic records, all of that, you even helped me with that with one of our readings that we had together, and really understanding what was going on in my life. And I had my first surgery at 30, and back surgery, and then had just issues all along with adrenals, with different things, but I was ignoring the message. And I think this is what I really share today with people, because there's a lot going on with our bodies. And not only from toxic chemicals and environmental things and the foods that we eat, but also because of the stuck emotions that we have, right? Not being able to process. For me, it was the anger. And so what I didn't realize, it was after this divorce. This was my third one. And he had been such an angry person, and I was the one kind of playing out the archetype of the good girl, trying to, keep everything calm and not realizing that, I was just as angry, that he was being a mirror for me. And that's what I teach in the forgiveness work, is how to look at life as a mirror. And he was a mirror for me, and I didn't know that until afterwards, when I got the divorce and I moved into this small little apartment and was trying to fix this desk. It was one of those real pressboard desks, those hard ones, and I missed the nail with a hammer and I hit my thumb. Now, that all hurts. We all can go, oh my God, yes, we can wince, right? We all wince when I say that. But I went into a raging anger and ripped that desk apart with a hammer, almost like a little blackout. Rage. I kind of came to laughing, crying, going, what was that? And that showed me, luckily I had guidance to help me understand it. It's like that showed me, he was mirroring for me how much anger I was holding inside myself, that I was afraid, key point, afraid to acknowledge. And my body was giving me messages, because it's like a vessel, right? Our vessel's like a pitcher of water, can only hold so much before it starts to overflow. And that's where I really started to understand the value of inner work, understanding where I needed to know myself better and how I can then improve my health by diving into these things and learning more about them and learning tools of how I can healthily, be able to release my anger. There was a lot there. And then, because that kind of helped me understand as I got into the forgiveness work, learning they started the forgiveness work based on working with cancer patients, and knowing that there was a common belief between cancer patients that they all felt that they had to be somebody that they're not in order to be loved. Now, how many of us have carried that? Right?
So many. And as I'm listening to you, there's just so much truth in what you're sharing. And as I'm listening, really what's coming forward strongly too is that, that innate programming to keep everything bottled up there, the programming, the societal programming, the cultural, the transgenerational, that tells us that we are weak in
Yeah.
sharing vulnerabilities and in expressing ourselves emotionally. And the divine truth of that is that that is a direct inversion to how we're literally wired, how we are literally created at a soul level. We are divine creators, creator beings, right? We're taught also to fear change, and change and evolution is part of who we are.
Yeah.
And forgiveness is such, I believe, a fundamental component of that journey of evolution.
And that's what I had found. I didn't realize, because after going through this back fusion, neck fusion, and then the brain tumor really shook me up, was the fact of, but it was also interesting because the brain tumor ended up not being cancerous, where I knew several people around me had died from this because of the cancer. And, I viewed it as a wake up, and it was really fascinating I thought I needed to forgive everyone around me. And what I found, which was true, which was very true, I felt that I needed to forgive them. But really, the key point that I like to get to with people is that really we need to forgive ourselves and learn self-acceptance for everything we've gone to, because I think like you do, it's like, I'm here for a reason. I came here. It's like one of the assumptions of radical forgiveness is that we are spiritual beings having a human experience. And that resonated so much with me that it's like, that makes sense of why I've gone through what I've gone through in this world. And that I came also what I can do is turn against myself. And there's programming, right? And conditioning, like you just mentioned, that helps us to turn it inward. Like, oh, you're too selfish. You're not giving enough. You're not doing this. Well, who's going to take care of me if I don't take care of me? And so learning that really all forgiveness is self forgiveness was huge in the sense of when I look at life and relationships as an opportunity for growth and healing, I look at it as a mirror in the forgiveness work, then I can see what has been denied, repressed, and rejected within myself, what I have buried because I didn't feel like I could handle it. There's all these safety mechanisms in place, but it was valuable to be able to go, oh, okay, by forgiving this ex, by forgiving my mom and my dad, because there was abandonment, rejection, all these things there, by doing that, what it does is it brings it back home to me. So then that I can do the work inside myself so I can actually be connected head and heart and clear any kind of, I'm going to say, resistance that I feel to receiving and giving love. And that's what I know, like in the Akashics, that's what I learned to do. I learned that how to do that for myself and then others. Does that make sense?
It totally makes sense. And you just said for yourself, and that was going to be my next question, what has your experience been with self-forgiveness? I find, one of the things on our journey, or that I think a lot of people have experienced, and I have too, is um, part of that evolution is also taking radical responsibility, right, for
Mhm.
ourselves, personal responsibility. Because even if we don't directly intend to, through our free will or through our misuse of free will, we create
Yes, we
all
do.
of our situations. So self forgiveness, right, is also so important, no matter what the intention is, forgiving yourself, like allowing yourself to release that guilt.
Absolutely. Guilt weighs heavy on us, and we're also conditioned for guilt. I was having a conversation today with another person about this, about the guilt. Especially, it happens with men too, but that has been laid upon women. And because it's one thing, it's like, why is it so selfish to take care of ourselves? Why do we have to beat ourselves up and, kind of take ourselves into the ground before we stop and go, oh, maybe I need to take care of myself? And because it came up as a caretaker, as a caregiver, because there's so many caregivers out there in the world, whether it's mothers, whether, it's women or nurses or whoever they are, there's caregivers that are giving so much of themselves without looking at their own hearts and looking at their own needs, because we've been told, we've been kind of conditioned to believe this. And so the self-forgiveness has been so valuable when I started to understand that I can start with awareness of what has gone on in my life. And so taking a look at that, because we always hear the first step is awareness, but it's really understanding I may not have been in control, because we all have free will. I'm so glad you brought that up. But there is a misuse, right, of this free will. But I may not have been in control of what happened, like for me, for instance, as a child. But what I do have responsibility for is how I'm going to move forward from that incident, experience, wound. And that once I become aware of that, then I can learn to take responsibility for learning to heal and learning to move forward. What can I glean from this experience? Because all that I've gone through has helped me to help others today. And so those of us that know that or want to do that, when we look back at our lives, that's usually what we're called to do. We're called to help people in the things that we have experienced, if that makes sense.
Oh, that's so true. I mean, I believe that's what it's all about, right? Like we're here, our journey here as a human is twofold. One is to expand ourselves at a soul level, right? To learn and then to take, you know, that learned experience when it's crystallized into wisdom and then sharing that with others. I always view humanity as like this big, colorful, like multicolored, interwoven
Yeah.
quilt, how where every thread is unique, and but yet they're all interwoven together.
Oh, I love that visual.
Yeah, it's I I'd love to have someone paint that someday, I think, because I'm
Yes.
not much of an artist in that way, but I have such a clear visual in my third eye of it.
Oh,
Uh,
I love it.
see that all the time. I wanted to say that, you're also, as a caregiver, experiencing this real time on your own journey, correct?
Oh my goodness. Yes, I
Yeah.
am. I am. And, even as a practitioner, forgiveness coach, I find that I wasn't being very compassionate and kind to myself. And that was a big wake up call for me again, as I have been struggling with my husband was diagnosed with dementia, and it threw me. So the last year, especially, he was diagnosed a year before and a lot happened, but this last year where he's done more decline, and I've had to step up in the caregiving role, I have experienced so many different things that just it's what I call sideswiped me. There was big bursts of emotions. There was anger, there was hurt, there was, all the grieving process, right? It's ambiguous grief. So that means that you're grieving for somebody that is still alive, and you don't know what's going to happen, but they're not the same person. So ambiguous grief can be also in addiction, where the person is in addiction and the other person who wants to care for them, you're in a grieving because that person is no longer the same, but they're still here. And I finally was able to have I'm going to call it a label for it, because I was feeling all these big emotions and I was angry with myself for not being able to be compassionate for him, because I was taking on all this new responsibility. Our partnership was not the same. Our dreams were no longer available, right? We're not able to move forward. Everything that I thought was going to happen was lost, and with no, ability to come back. And so I went through this period of time of where I really needed to do that inner work. And I had to, what I call cocoon, because I needed just time, and I couldn't do the business, and I really couldn't do a whole lot except for try to heal and try to figure this out. And it was during that time, and a lot of caregivers go into this, is we don't ask for help, because one, there's a strange, really odd feeling that I need to do it myself comes up big time. There's also some shame and guilt that comes out, Jennifer, during this time. Is like, oh, I'm gonna look weak. There was all sorts of this healing over this last year. And then I think the interesting thing, and I think you'll get this, is that, and then the pattern from my mother showed up in this whole experience. And so I'm going to call it fascinated by what I was able to look at, journal about, and process through. And it was like the abandonment of my mother when I was young, and the rejection was showing up for me to heal through. And so all of this was happening. And finally, my body started talking to me again. And I got to this point, it's like, okay. And I fell to my knees because my guides were telling me, you need help. I wasn't listening. And finally, I just dropped to my knees and I said, okay, I surrender. And it was fascinating because the next day, I was introduced to two people who do caregiving. They help with caregivers, like in home, and they also help with placement. I mean, it was like a universal answer the next day, and I was so happy for. So these last few months have been a little bit more spacious, a little bit more open. It's still hard emotionally, yet I feel like I'm not alone, right? Like a lot of caregivers can feel like we're alone, and we're not alone. We don't need to be on this journey. I think that's a conditioning, or it's a false belief that we have to do this stuff by ourselves. I mean, where does that come from, right?
Yeah, I mean, what comes forward on that is there is like this sense of responsibility, you know? It's, I chose to be with this person, this is my partner, so therefore it's my responsibility. That also, I mean, that's not just intuitive, that also comes from, I've had multiple grandparents that have had dementia, specifically my grandmother. Took care of my grandfather for 15 years with his
Wow.
dementia and Parkinson's before he finally
Mm.
transitioned. And every single thing you're talking about, I'm just nodding my head on the other side, going,
Yeah.
yes, 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 because she would not ask for help. I mean, it got to the point that it was ridiculous, you know, and then finally we were able to make some changes. But, you know, like we were saying about free will earlier, everybody has that. And for the longest time, she wouldn't accept help with him. And then
Yeah.
she finally did, but she felt this deep sense of responsibility, like, you know, that she had to be the one
Mm-hmm.
doing all of it. And I mean, not even, you know, just aside from the toll that I think it takes mentally and emotionally, but for her, you know, she's like 4 feet 10 inches tall, and he
Oh,
was like 6'1".
wow.
So how she managed to do that?
I don't know, man.
This episode's all about you and your story, just saying that I, you know, definitely resonate with so much
You
of what
do.
you're saying with that journey, for sure.
You do. And it takes a deep, and I kind of, and I think, the grieving process is something else. And I was realizing I became certified as a grief educator in this process. That's one of the gifts that came out of this, was because I wanted to understand, because forgiveness and grief go hand in hand. We are constantly, every day. It's not that happened to be the death of someone, but every day we're grieving something. We're grieving the loss of who we were, or who we wanted to be, or the job, or the move, or the change of relationship or friendship. There is a constant grief process happening. And that is part of forgiveness, because as we do more inner work, then, the more that our relationships change and we change ourselves. And so relationships can fall away and new relationships come in. But there is a grieving that goes along with it. And I was finding that with my clients. This one client, she was so upset about these friends that didn't quite understand. She was on a deep journey that she needed for herself, and they were not what she called coming along. So she so desperately wanted them to understand that it was causing conflict between the two of them, because she kept trying to share about it and they just wanted to drink and have fun and go shopping and do things. She's like, no, no, what about this and that? And she was getting so upset and resentful that it was causing herself to shut down. And so what we got to do is take a look at the fact that, okay, that people and relationships are going to change depending upon how we change our energy, how we shift our process and our thought process, and because it can't, the more inner work we do, of course, it's going to shift our perception of things. But that doesn't mean everybody else is going to want to do that or able to come along. And that goes back with that expectations. Expectations are resentments waiting to happen, is what I say. And if I expect someone to think the same way I do or want the same things, well, then I'm the one that's going to suffer. And that's what she found for herself. So she, through the work that we are doing through the self-forgiveness, self-acceptance course that I teach, she's learning that, oh, okay. And she's going through a grieving process of letting go of these friends. But we also can open ourselves up to, maybe that relationship can change, can stay in our energy field. They can stay with us, but it just might look different. How can I be open to having it look different, and then have the conversation with the person about how it can be different?
Absolutely. What would you say would be, the top kind of brief 2 or 3 signs that someone is being called to this forgiveness work and to this new depth of inner work with themselves, like some easy ways to pick up what the universe is putting down?
I love that. So this is where we get to cultivate awareness. And this is where just being open to the messages that we receive. So, for instance, for me, it was my body, right, talking to me. And what I started to notice was I was feeling the same about these relationships. So the universe was getting my attention by giving me a boss that had the same, that was the familiar feeling. I'm going to go with feelings here of how I felt. I felt the same about the boss as I did about my ex-husband and my other ex-husband and the other one, and so it was like, oh, I started noticing similarities. So being aware of what some similarities are in your relationships. Relationships are huge, right? As you know, I mean, we get so much growth. I think that's what we're here for. That's how our souls expand, is to be able to do that through a relationship. And so noticing, becoming aware of where you are feeling resentful, where you are feeling the same kind of feelings, and just kind of start writing it down is what I encourage people to do, because you hear the word awareness and we can almost write it off, but it's so valuable, hugely valuable, when we start allowing ourselves to be aware of the shifts and the changes that are happening around us and in us.
Such
Yeah.
priceless advice. Thank you so much. And Brenda, just, looking to wrap up now, um, what would be, what are you most feeling guided to share in this now moment?
I'd like to share with the listeners that keep in mind that forgiveness isn't just about the other person. That forgiveness, there's 3 things that I like to share about forgiveness that I have found is valuable. It's about learning to have inner awareness, really getting to know ourselves on a deeper level. The second one is taking self responsibility. And this gives us the choice, which is the third thing, to decide how we want to move forward with our own growth. Because what happens is we get conditioned and caught up in how somebody else, or how we think we're supposed to be in the world. And that's where the disconnect happens, and the incongruency between ourselves and our soul can take place. And it also causes a dissonance between us and other people. When we are not congruent with who we truly are, then that has us show up as being somebody that we're not. And people can feel it, we can feel it. It doesn't feed us. So then we start living at somebody else's dream. So to live our own dream, to be able to move forward for our own growth, really taking it in and knowing who we are through doing this inner work is the best gift that we can give ourselves and give the world.
So yummy. I'm like, what word do I want to use?
Yeah.
In my mind, I'm going delicious, yummy, juicy. What is that?
Yes,
It's like
all of
all
it.
of those things. It's all of that. Brenda, for those, I know that you sent us some information. We're definitely going to include everything in the show notes for our listeners. And for those listening via audio, if someone's feeling guided to connect with you, where's the best place for them to reach out?
So they can reach out to me by email if they would like more information, or to connect at brenda@brendareisscoaching.com. They can also learn more about the forgiveness work by going to Instagram at Brenda Reiss Coaching. And they can see, because I give information on there, or on Facebook, Brenda Reiss Coach.
Awesome. Brenda, what an absolute treat to connect with you yet again and in a new way. and to have this beautiful conversation today. Thank you for the light that you are and for all that you do. I deeply appreciate you.
Oh, I so appreciate you, Jennifer, and I just love connecting on this deeper level with you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for listening to Path of the Awakened Heart. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts or pathoftheawakenedheart.com so you never miss an episode. To learn more about living with an awakened heart and navigating your ascension journey, visit me at jenniferspore.com.